I'm not going to go too deep into spoiler territory until the end of the video, but if you're not a fan of any mild spoilers, consider yourself warned. It's a miracle! It finally happened! DC figured out how to make a Marvel movie. All jokes aside, it's hard to believe that after all the countless incarnations of characters like Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man we've gotten over the past several decades, this is the first major theatrical feature film to star the most iconic female superhero ever conceived. But here it is in 2017, Wonder Woman has arrived, and what an entrance it proved to be. After a brief but memorable introduction in last year's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Gal Gadot returns to the big screen as Diana Prince, and the rumors are true. The hype is real. DC has its first film that can be unanimously agreed by fans, critics, and skeptics alike to be a reasonably paced, well-made story about an interesting and sympathetic central character. At long last, the DC Extended Universe can tout a film that is not an utterly embarrassing disaster. Monster director Patty Jenkins helms this origin story that finds Diana, daughter of Queen Hippolyta, removed from her life on Themyscira to pursue a greater purpose, that being to track down the god of war Ares and put an end to the devastation of World War I. Yes, that really is what this movie is about. Take the fish-out-of-water humor of Kenneth Branagh's Thor and match it with the World War setting of Captain America: The First Avenger, desaturate the picture a la Snyder, and add a hell of a lot more emotion, humor, narrative focus, and heart, and boom, the result is the best DCEU movie yet. The movie brims with visual flair from a cinematography perspective. The CGI itself has some of the rubber person syndrome from early 2000s era blockbusters, those moments when Diana's flipping around and crashing through walls, but everything about the world we are presented is gorgeously shot. I love the juxtaposition between the prosperous society that exists on Themyscira, matched against the dreary landscape of corruption and despair of our world circa 1918. Is it sad that it's actually refreshing to see a superhero saving people and then smiling afterwards, showing visible signs that they're genuinely happy to be protecting human lives? The sustained energy and smile on my face during the entire No Man's Land sequence, where Diana first rises to the challenge and storms that battlefield leading the troops to victory, was where the film reached its full potential and in my eyes transcended the comic book movie label. It became more. The entire film is consistently empowering, not only in its portrayal of strong-minded, capable women fighting right alongside men towards a common goal, but it is impressive in the way it empowers the human spirit as well. The entire film is predicated on the spirit we see in Diana. Gadot becomes Wonder Woman, and I was thoroughly impressed by her ability to carry this film and completely embody the character. Her innocence and naivete matched with her warrior spirit and overwhelming goodwill made her the beacon of hope in the dark sludge that has become DC's cinematic universe. And her heroics in this film, from Steve Trevor's rescue in Themyscira to her actions on the battlefield, paint her as not only a compelling superhero, but a well-rounded character overall. Her want to do good, to end the war while preserving as many lives along the way, is an inspiring thesis for this film to take. Her belief in the human race, that we all hold the potential for good, under all the influences of politics and the biases generated during wartime, is the message that shined through, until it was completely undercut by the finale, but we'll get to that momentarily. One of the greatest joys of this movie was watching the relationship blossom between Diana and Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, a US soldier turned British spy who crashes his plane on the shores of Themyscira and changes the course of Diana's story. I'm sorry, but this is the best romance in any comic book film. It feels completely natural and organic from the moment these two meet eyes, and every moment Pine and Gadot share the screen, sparks fly. Speaking of Pine, much like Gadot, I think we are witnessing him here in his finest acting form. He balances the comedy and drama required of the role like a seasoned thespian, while still grounding the character in the film's serial hokiness that a period piece like this demands. And Jenkins is not afraid to revel in the silliness of the genre. Look no further than the rogues gallery of evil villains that wouldn't feel out of place in a Saturday morning cartoon. Now, I'm just going to list some things that I loved about the movie, specific moments and scenes, like the sequence where the Germans storm the beach and the Amazons leap into action. It's well shot and great to see strong women defending themselves in glorious fashion. The art style during the exposition dump / bedtime story that Diana's mother Hippolyta shares with her, the story of the Amazons and Ares. The scene on the boat where Diana and Steve casually talk about the logistics of marriage and the etiquette of sexual discourse at that time in history. The entire No Man's Land sequence, great stuff. Diana and Steve dancing during the snowfall, talking about what people do when there is no war. The character of Dr. Poison is a lot of fun, and her facial prosthesis added to the demented brilliance of her chemical creations. The score from Rupert Gregson-Williams, listen to it a few times and you'll know exactly what I mean. Steve's sacrifice in the plane carrying the mustard gas, once again, Pine is devastatingly good in the role. And lastly, the scene where Diana kills Ludendorff, only to realize that her suspicions were wrong and he is not Ares. And Steve and her have the discussion that war is not the result of one individual, but that a wide multitude of factors contribute to such a conflict. Honestly, this film was almost a flawless superhero tale up until the final 20 minutes, where it didn't completely crap the bed, but it definitely wet the sheets a little. And that note that many factors contribute to war and that men are not always good was such a profound thing to bring up in the conclusion of such a movie, but they just couldn't leave it at that. Have Diana and Steve stop the gas from shipping out through a small scale and grounded resolution. Maybe a little bit of melee against Dr. Poison so she can get some on-screen comeuppance, but no. Professor Lupin turns out to be the real Ares. British mustache and all. And what the fuck were they thinking? I enjoyed the first 2 hours of this movie so much I forgot I was even watching a DC movie until David Thewlis's Sir Patrick What's-His-Face showed up and revealed himself as the Greek god of war. It was one of the worst creative decisions for a film ever made and completely undercut the message that was brought up only moments before. It feels like Jenkins and screenwriter Alan Heinberg had an ending they were satisfied with, but the studio or some higher power said, "We need her to fight a big CGI bad guy. That's how this works." And then we got this clumsily conceived and utterly embarrassing conclusion. Not too different from the Doomsday battle at the end of Batman v Superman. That's how bad it was. But all that being said, that did not ruin Wonder Woman for me, and I left the film excited to see more from the character in the future, even if we'll have to sit through an indefinitely mediocre to terrible Justice League movie later this year before her own sequel. I think Patty Jenkins was an inspired choice for this material, and her balancing of heroics and heart set this film apart from others of its kind. It is far better than Thor or the First Avenger, and while it feels very much of the 2011 Phase 1 era of MCU films, it still manages to feel fresh, as it shows us this kind of story from a unique perspective. I don't want to say it's because it has a woman's touch, but yes, it's because it has a woman's touch. Sorry, not sorry. This is a well-shot, narratively focused character piece that presents us with a heroine that can be admired and injects some hope into the dreary, self-serious universe that Snyder and Ayer established. This film still very much holds the same blue and gray visual aesthetic, but it's the little touches, like the red, blue, and yellow colors in Wonder Woman's costume, or the sweeping vistas of Themyscira, which I hope we eventually get to see more of. There was a lot to love about this movie, and finally DC can compete with Marvel on a critical level as well as a financial level. And I'm all for it. Well, that video ended up being a lot longer than I wanted it to be. Thanks for watching this far. Those were my thoughts on Wonder Woman. I had to see the film twice just to see if I picked up on any more things. This was a tough one to write because I feel like the conversation for this movie can get really political or socio-political very quickly. And while yes, this is a very significant film in the superhero movie genre and that particular canon of films, I wanted to keep the criticisms specifically towards the movie and the elements of the movie itself. And I think my review pretty well reflects that sentiment. Yeah, I was really impressed with the work the whole team did. Patty Jenkins, Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Alan Heinberg, the screenwriter. The hype is real. DC does have their first fresh movie. And yes, of course, there are problems. Like the girl who played young Wonder Woman was pretty terrible, and some of the CGI and green screen is pretty obvious. Of course, the finale with Wonder Woman versus Ares was one of the most laughably awful things I've seen in a movie in years. Everything else in this movie was so thoughtfully done and so impactful that overall I really enjoyed it, and I can't help but recommend Wonder Woman to anyone, young, old, male, female. It doesn't really matter. This movie has something for everyone, just like any other comic book movie would. Just like I would recommend Iron Man to anyone, I would recommend Batman to anyone, Spider-Man to anyone. These characters are universal figureheads in popular culture, and yeah, kudos to them for finally taking the initiative to make a Wonder Woman movie. Those are just my thoughts. Let me know if you've seen the movie. I assume most people have at this point. I'm a little late to the party on this. You can check out more of my reviews, of course, at your leisure. But with that, my name is Nicholas Janzen, and thank you very much for watching.